This is a stock Toyota Supra, producing 321 horsepower. And here's a modified Supra, cranking out an impressive 800 horsepower. Next up, we have the Nissan GTR R34. In its stock form, it delivers 276 horsepower, but after some serious tuning and modifications, this beast can push up to 1,000 horsepower. And then there's the Mazda RX-7, originally producing 261 horsepower, but with the right tweaks, some have managed to push this car to an astonishing 2,000 horsepower. But it doesn't stop there. In this test, we've included performance cars from every major Japanese brand, each one capable of reaching high horsepower levels after tuning. What makes this possible is the tuning-friendly nature of these cars. You can extract 3 to 4 times the horsepower of the stock form, all while maintaining high reliability, something that's incredibly hard to achieve with cars from other countries. This is why performance cars from the JDM, or Japanese domestic market, have such a massive fan following. In fact, JDM has grown into its own subculture, with a following rivaling that of traditional sports cars, perhaps even surpassing it. The appeal is so strong that even Christian von Koenigsegg's son, heir to the world's fastest car manufacturer, is a huge fan of JDM. His passionate fan base has driven the prices of discontinued JDM cars from 20 to 25 years ago to skyrocket. In some cases, these cars are now selling for 10 times their original price in the used car market. The love for JDM is more than just a trend, it's a global phenomenon. But after knowing all this, one question arises in our minds: if aftermarket tuners could make these cars highly powerful while retaining most of their reliability, why didn't Japanese car makers make them equally powerful? Welcome back to Motor Nation's Xplained. Japanese car makers had only one reason for this: the gentleman's agreement. To put it simply, a gentleman's agreement occurs when 2 or more gentlemen mutually decide, without a contract, to do or not do something. It's a type of promise that isn't written or signed anywhere but is followed just like a promise. The Japanese JAMA, or the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association, was involved in this agreement. All the Japanese automotive manufacturers that were part of JAMA decided to cap the speed of their vehicles at 180 km/h and limit their cars' power output to 276 horsepower. This agreement seems strange because, at that time, Japan was a growing auto market, and capping the maximum speed of cars in such a market could have been disastrous. So why did the Japanese brands do this? The main reason was bosoku. The term bososoku in English means running out of control. Bososoku was a type of Japanese subculture that initially had nothing to do with cars. It was actually inspired by Japanese individuals returning from World War II. The bososoku lifestyle was dangerous because it involved living with a constant adrenaline rush. To quench their thirst, they turned to motorcycles. Initially, they would ride motorcycles at very high speeds, often in gangs taunting the police. This behavior led to the gentleman's agreement, starting with motorcycle manufacturers. Many people don't know this, but the Japanese Big Four Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Kawasaki were the first brands to electronically cap the speeds of their motorcycles to prevent these Japanese antisocial elements from causing too much trouble. However, car makers had nothing to do with this agreement at first. Car manufacturers got involved when things started spiraling out of control. In 1998, 10,000 people in Japan died due to high-speed accidents, prompting car makers to take action. This number of deaths was the result of one major factor at the time. This is why the majority of mainstream car makers in Japan entered into a gentleman's agreement in 1998, capping the power of Japanese cars at 276 horsepower. They did this because people were misusing their cars and dying as a result of their own mistakes. This led to the world getting the wrong impression that Japanese cars were not safe. However, this wasn't true. Japanese car makers were always financially strong, and they invested heavily in research and development. As a result, their cars were equipped with all the safety features available at the time, such as ABS, airbags, and seatbelt pretensioners. As safety features in cars improved, the number of deaths due to high speeds also declined, even though the speed of the cars wasn't reduced. While horsepower was capped, many Japanese automakers were still producing sports cars that were slightly more powerful than 276 horsepower. Some were manufacturing cars with 300 or 320 horsepower. This was because an internal horsepower war had started among Japanese automakers. However, JAMA was a big obstacle, preventing car makers from increasing the horsepower of their cars as much as they would have liked. According to many theories, they found another way to make their cars extremely powerful. They provided cars with less power to the market but over-engineered them so that these cars could easily be tuned to extract 2 to 3 times their original horsepower. The components of their cars were designed to withstand this increased horsepower. To understand how Japanese automotive manufacturers managed to do this, let's discuss the ultimate boss of JDM cars, the Mark IV Supra. It was equipped with a 2JZ GTE engine, an inline 6-cylinder 3-liter engine. The G in GTE stands for Performance Wide-Angle Valve DOHC, T stands for turbocharged, and E stands for electronic fuel injection. This engine had electronic fuel injectors and turbochargers, both of which were easily tunable. The second feature that made it highly tunable was its engine layout. Instead of having a V6 engine, this car had an inline-6 engine, which made it easy for aftermarket tuners to fit big turbos into the engine. In its stock form, the engine came with a pre-fitted turbo sequential setup, where the first turbocharger spooled at 1,800 RPM and the second at 4,000 RPM. This eliminated turbo lag. However, to increase horsepower, tuners would replace the twin turbo setup with a bigger turbo. This big turbo, along with a better exhaust, better intake, bigger front-mounted intercooler, larger fuel injectors, fuel lines, fuel pumps, and an ACU tune, allowed the car to handle huge horsepower. To manage this power, you also need a strong engine block, which is where the biggest feature of the 2JZ engine comes in handy. The 2JZ engine block is made of cast iron and has a closed deck. In simple terms, the engine block that holds the cylinders is very strong, but in a closed deck, the engine provides even better strength. The cast iron construction is already highly durable, which is why the boost generated in these engines to produce an additional 500 to 600 horsepower can be easily withstood. Not only the engine, but the crankshaft of this car is also made of ultra-strong reinforced steel. This allows these engines to withstand the increased pressure generated after all these modifications and power increases. And it's not just the Supra that was over-engineered, many other JDM cars can produce a huge amount of horsepower. For example, the Nissan GTR R34. It had only a 2.8-liter engine in the late 1990s and produced just 276 horsepower, but after modifications, this car can produce up to 1,000 horsepower. Its engine was developed to withstand this increased horsepower. These companies also sold many high-performance cars in other countries, such as the Lancer EVO 10, a 4-door, all-wheel drive sedan. From the factory, it came with only 400 horsepower from a 2-liter engine. Honda also developed high-end tunable cars in the past, like the NSX, S2000, and Civic. Everyone already knows about the Honda Civic. It's clear that Japanese cars are not only highly tunable but can also produce high horsepower. Despite people generating high horsepower from these cars, they remain highly reliable, even for daily use. This is a major reason why the prices of these cars continue to appreciate rather than depreciate. In some used car markets, the prices of these Japanese cars have skyrocketed. For instance, in late 1998, the Mark IV Supra was priced at $40,000, but today in the American used car market, this car can sell for $150,000 to $200,000. Similarly, in 1991, the Honda NSX was priced at around $62,000, but today in the used car market, it sells for $90,000 to $100,000. However, this isn't the case with every car. While some have retained their value, others have depreciated. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of JDM legends and the incredible culture surrounding them. These cars, with their tunable engines and timeless designs, continue to capture the hearts of enthusiasts around the globe. From the iconic Supra to the unstoppable GTR, it's clear why these machines have become more than just cars. They're a symbol of passion, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of speed. Whether you're a die-hard JDM fan or just beginning to appreciate these engineering marvels, there's no denying the impact they've had on the automotive world. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. Keep the pedal to the metal, and we'll see you in the next video.